They'll be calling you a radical. I've thought for a long time where to do this and start this. As it's in my book, but I thought, what am I going to do? Write a book and sell a book on my... That would be so grotesque. As you followed this whole path through, I thought which room to do this. I want to lay out my journey and how this came about cancer and how that I'm alive, which is miracle after miracle after miracle. And the reason I want to do this before I get down to San Diego, as this whole madness started down there. We have 2 feet of snow here. Now I thought, where do I do it? One of my favorite people in the world is Henry Miller, and those classic interviews with him those young people did in his bathroom, which by the way are so incredible and brilliant and genius. As this journey that you watch has been purely some new form of literature. As I have a book, I have it published, chopping at the bit, waiting for this book. They're going to be pissed I do this, I don't care. As I read my other one online, as people know my post-ignorance journey. Look, I want this to be said, and I want this story to be told, how the prevention and the knowledge is the only reason I'm alive. And I have a long ways to go, a very long way, but it's miracle after miracle. And the genie is out of the bottle. Fukushiama, they're going to do nothing. The Nevada test site, that's very real. These are very real. My father, drafted Marine right here, the only one drafted in the whole area, the fake Christian haters. As he was marching, human guinea pigged into the desert, into the Nevada test site. And I used to tell people that story, and I'd fight with people, and he died of leukemia, acute leukemia. I've been in this fight, the anti-nuclear fight, my whole life because I grew up in Utah. And Utah was ground zero for, Carol Gallup can tell you this, as Henry Miller could have told you this, as Walt Stegner could have told you this, as Scott Matheson, our governor who died, the downwinder thesis, it was here, it was paramount, it was here. We were the hardest fighters there were anti-nuclear because everybody knew. Now this generation is forgot. So I stayed in this fight, and I stayed in this fight as a young man. I was very autistic, struggled as a young man. Really had no idea. I had a brilliant second grade teacher who identified it through my brilliant grandmother. You know, they didn't call it autism in those days, and I learned how to cope. And I learned how to cope through the birds and the sunshine and work and art and creativity and loves and beauties and, all kinds of things. As I've evolved along in my life, I stayed in this fight, the nuclear thesis and the nuclear fight. As when BP happened, I was working on my PhD, as you know, post-ignorance, and I love it how I use as I live to tell. And somebody arrogant says, "God, you're really going to quote Madonna?" I'm not quoting Madonna. That, by the way, that movie that it was set for was not intended. It was set for the spoof in Oregon off the Ophelia, the girl in the woods, which is Hamlet. I say I've been living in the country where it's, by the way, it is a brilliant, brilliant song. And they use at close range, which is an incredible, brilliant piece of art. It is a brilliant, including that song. It is genius. It is brilliant. Christopher Walker, Sean Penn, that is a true story. He actually tweaked and rewrote as I wrote a thing on the Shirtwaist Fire. I really find it arrogant. As people who know my post-ignorance, as the few people that have my book, as it will never be in paper, know what I'm up to. I can speak and write unbelievably in multiple languages, many, many multiple languages. My vlog, part of my PhD poster, is trying to prove why we're so ignorant. BP happens and I just outraged. Pure passion flows out. Fukushima happens. Pure outrage. I give that very first video. I woke up in the middle of the night and I always say Cassandra, the Greek goddess hypothesis. You know the story. Well, I went along, ranting and raving, did those videos, you can watch them, everybody's followed along knowing. I gave these first reports saying it's going to give you leukemia, it's going to give you leukemia, it's going to give you leukemia. I've been so incredibly accurate from day one. The only one that was incredibly accurate from day one is Gunderson, these guys in there arguing. This Busby wrote a song, put it on thing, about me flinging my hands around. I'll put it up, it's on YouTube. So many of these people wearing tin hats. I was to a T accuracy, Cassandra, scary. So as I went along, I'm ranting and raving, I'm carrying on, I'm going crazy about Fukushima, people think I'm nuts, keep going, blah, 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 it's going to give you leukemia, it's going to give you leukemia, blah, blah, blah. It's pouring PU into the jet stream over and over and over, the accuracy is unbelievable. I've been writing a book about my story the whole time, been working on it for years. Well, as you know, I got sick immediately, out of nowhere. I was really stressed. You know, I was finishing up my PhD, you know, you guys were following along. You know, I'd been down at Del Mar and Santa Anita betting horses, which I always do, and I always thought maybe I've been drinking. All it was, I was in tremendous shape as me and my nephews had a push-up contest. Just 2 weeks before I got sick, I rattled off 112. I've been one of these guys that was just born with incredible physical genetics, and I've had that hawk and crow in my hand as I balanced my finance and my art career my whole life. I mean, I was born with a six-pack. I mean, just ripped from head to toe with muscles. Had all this one. I look back on it, what a curse. You know, had that beautiful, and I was a plastic, worked with my shirt, and I think about the females. Wow. I look back on it. I really was nothing but a sex object for all of them. I really was. I hate to say that. But, I mean, I was just ripped from head to toe with muscles my whole life, naturally. I was so strong. Oh, it's incredible condition. Incredible physical condition. You know, I was one of these guys, thought, this can never happen to me. As my father died of leukemia after being nuked in the back, ABL, I knew the leukemia thesis. I was outraged. I sued the Justice Department. Went after, would tell the story about the 40,000 men being all nuked to death. Would tell the story about Chernobyl and the 500, 600,000 men. And people looked at me like I was insane. Well, as this went on, I erupted. Well, that was 3/11. In September 11, I got a little flicker in my stomach, and I says, I feel like, you know, it's just a little tickle. I've told multiple people, it just doesn't even hurt. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Well, October 13th, I got cramped up so intense, it was unbelievable. I thought I had food poisoning. I really did think it happened, and I'm a tough guy. I say, you think I was born with these scars across my face? It took years living in this violent place. Severed tongue, broken back, broken. My daughter knows I casted my own leg a few years ago. Sewed my own arm up. You can see this big scar right here. You can see the suture mark. She watched me do it. No, I didn't sit and drink whiskey either. I sewed my own arm up. After I had the fall in 2005, I was uninsurable. It whacked my thing. I fell off the roof 30 feet, broke my back. It was not my fault. While I was working, severed my tongue. Ruptured my tongue in my throat. But it got so intense, so for me to call an ambulance in the middle of the night, you know, finally the ambulance came, and it was horrible. I started puking. And when I puked, I could say, oh my God, it wasn't puke, it was black and nasty. And I'm like, oh. And you know, the ETMs are here and they're like, it's gotta be your freaking appendix, it's gotta be your appendix, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I said, I'll drive. So I drove up there, you know, they got me on the phone, they were great with me. Got up there in the emergency room, and I went through malpractice after malpractice after malpractice. This piece of shit, his name's Brown at the emergency room AKD, who's the same guy who didn't set my nose properly, the same guy who refused to sew me on my arm, so I had to sew my other thing. I'm going to go after him. He's a creep. He's beyond a creep. He's a malpractice piece of shit. He's the attending of this again. The same guy that didn't properly set my nose. That's a brass knuckle scar. That's another story. And he didn't, you know, had a hematoma on my front brain, didn't bother. Sent me home as the plastic surgeon, and I've had 6 surgeries on my face, 6. Over the time, he says, the guy freaking totaled your face. You know, could have been handled that night in the hospital. Same guy. And he's like, well, I'm uninsured. So it's just get you in, get you out. So I go in, and I'm like, I'm so sick. The attendant first, Natalie, is a friend I grew up with. I know she's a brilliant nurse. She's been there forever. I'm like, I think it's a blockage. She says, yeah, I think you're right. You know, she's been a nurse for 30 years. It's got to be a blockage. So he comes in, runs blood tests, whatever. I've been watching the listeria outbreak on Cantaloupe and thought, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. As I watched this young girl, so her dad curled up on the floor. I thought maybe. So he ran the blood test, whatever. I said, God, we can't find anything wrong. And I kept puking, and I finally started to calm down, and they x-rayed me. No blockage. He's like, and I'll never forget. He says, you do have an elevated white count. I should have known right then. I should have known right then. And I was like, he said, but you know, that's just infection. That could be anything. Yeah, and I felt better. Go home. So I went home, a couple days worse. Go back. Same thing. Went through the same doctor appointment, sent me home again. And I got halfway home and I'm like, no, it was a Friday afternoon. Most cancer patients now I know are diagnosed on Friday afternoons by this way. So I turned around. Then I got halfway up and I said, nah, turned around again. And then finally I said, just go. And I went up there and I threw a fit in there and they put me in there, and it was a woman doctor this time, which she was great, by the way. And she She said, let's CAT scan you. So they finally CAT scanned me. And they were gone a long time, long time. And I was feeling okay. I was feeling better. You know, I was still cramped up. And I was watching the interview with Isaacson about Steve Jobs on the television. You know, refusing the surgery. I mean, there we go with my orange hat. My Hansen thesis is about, you're crazy Reddick, that idiot in Texas. You know, the Rick Simpson thesis, it's dangerous that not vaccinating varying autism, which was my PhD, debunked that whole thing. So, I'm like, God, you know, they were gone a long time. And I'm like, no biggie, no biggie. It ain't nothing. You know, hell, look at me. I got muscles ripped up and have tonsils. Hell, they can't have this. Nothing's going to be bad with me. She comes in and she says, Kevin, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what? She's like, you have a huge mass down in your lower right mesentery. And you have big tumors all through there. And you got a huge, nasty mass down there. I've been talking, we've been meeting, we've been looking, talking among us. What is it? We think it's carcinoid cancer. Hands me a Wikipedia page. This is we're admitting you right now. Okay. So as I'm headed up, I start reading through the Wikipedia. Carcinoid cancer, it's nothing. Just tumors, right? They could be there forever. Surgery, remove them, no biggie, unless it is metastasized. If it is metastasized to the liver, 100% death sentence. Only possible chance is massive surgery. So I get right at the top of the elevator. Here comes the physician. You, Kevin? Yeah. And he says, I'm just reviewing our subjects. Come to see you down there. So they're admitting me. He says, first thing out of my mouth, is it in my liver? Yeah. It's in your liver. There's a spot on your liver. I'm like, oh. He says, Kevin, you have all the classic signs. This is not good. You have drop in libido, which I did. I had a massive quick drop in libido. I had numbness in my right arm. I had urgency and urgency. My earwax had gone hard the month before. He says, you have all the symptoms. This is not good. I said, you know, I want to know bullshit. Tell me what is, come on. I'm a gambler. Tell me this. Well, we need more tests, but my guess is if it is what I think it is, which I'm pretty confident it is, you maybe have 2 months. So I just completely broke down. Called my daughters. My middle daughter comes up. Well, 2 weeks earlier, before this happened, and I have Danish bloodlines. My last name's not Blanch, you know, and I'd had this dream. I'm a gambler, I like to gamble, but I don't play slot machines very often. You know, I'm a horse player. I had this dream that I was playing a slot machine, just reached in change in my pocket, which I would never do. Put in a slot machine, punched it, and I won $12.71 in a voucher. And I punched the voucher, and I stuck it in this great big crazy looking slot machine, progressive slot machine. I stuck it in, and I thought, I could play the whole $12 one pull. Boom, push one pull, and it lined up 4-4. And these 4 iconic, crazy looking icons. Now that I know they look exactly like a cancer tumor. 6 across. Now I know what the 44, literature connotation. And it just started spitting out money, and it went to 500, then 1,000, then 100,000, then 1,000,000, and it still was going. It was the most euphoric dream I'd ever had in my life. And my daughter came in that night, and she was really upset, and I'm like, through the night, it was horrible. It was a horrible night. They drugged me, and it was horrible. And I was like, do you think I'm going to die? She says, no. I think you're going to live. And I told her about that dream. So, anyway, the next night, my young daughter comes in. She has a new baby. And I says, can you stay the night, you and the baby in there, you know? And, yeah, we'll curl up on this couch. Okay. So the nurse comes in. You can't say, Nazi nurse. I go off on her like I do. You know me. So I said, go get the head nurse. So they go get the head nurse. She's a little old lady. She comes in. I told her the story. She says, no, Kevin, you're right. You shouldn't be alone. She says, I'll move you over to this other room. We'll another bed. We've never done this before, but we need to do this. So we did it. She stayed the night. 3 a.m. they come in and get me. Just scope me up both ends. I mean, I'm a wreck. I'm in a surreal wrecked state. And they take me in there, and Dr. Taos, she's 3:30 in the morning, she's like, Kevin, who told you this was metastasized to the liver? And I said, multiple doctors, they all told me that. She says, that's a normal spot on your liver. A 51-year-old male, that's no, I do this all day. That's not cancer. No way is that cancer. My blood pressure was 180 over something. It immediately dropped 60 points. She says, I'm going to get real rough with you. I'm going to dig in hardcore in your body. Okay, so they knocked me out, did their thing, woke up in the room. Doctor comes in, and he's a Japanese doctor. If I ever find this punk, oh, if I ever find this creep. He comes in, And he sees my daughter in the room, takes a fit. You can't do that. And I says, oh really? Why can't I? You know, and he was just an asshole. And he says, well, you know, they come back, you have an ulcer. It's an ulcer. That's all it is. And those tumors are not as you know, it's just normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Just an ulcer. Really? Yeah, nothing wrong with you. That's all it is, that ulcer, is that pain. Okay? What about my diet? Don't restrict my diet, don't anything. Send me home, load me up on the medicine. By the way, one of the components of the three-way medicine costs $12 or $400. Of course they put me on the $400 and rob me. So I go home, I'm eating that medicine. I'm so sick, I am wasting away. I'm losing multiple pounds a day. This is getting so horrible. And right here in this bathroom, I'm curled up. I'm dying. I'm dying, literally dying. So they scheduled me for a biopsy. So this went on. I can't take it anymore, so I go to the other emergency room. I'm so sick. I've never been in such sick pain. Go up there, and they admit me, and this guy shoots me full of 2 bags of fluid. When I mean, I'm sealed off by the bowel looping. Nothing could get through. My stomach making any, he says, oh, that's normal. I said, no, it's not normal noises. Shoots me up with morphine, which is the worst thing you can do for stomach pain. You know, it's horrible. I mean, he almost killed me. That's, by the way, how Warhol died. And so, they send me home. Just tells me to go home. I call my daughter to come get me, and her boyfriend, and I'm outside literally. It's in October. I'm curled up on this sidewalk. Finally, you know, they get me home. I lay right here, and I've never passed out from pain in my life. I passed out right here on the floor from pain. Finally passed out. My brother shows up. He's like, "What the hell?" I said, "I'm dying. I'm dying." You know, and so the next morning, I kind of felt a little better, whatever, so I go down to the Huntsman, to the U, which, by the way, Huntsman, chemical, that's how, styrofoam containers, 357 plants around the world, cause cancer, then treat cancer. They're phonies, by the way. So I go down there, now they have a big industry of treating cancer. So I go down there, and I said, I'm not leaving until someone sees me. I refuse to leave. You're supposed to be the best cancer unit in the world. They wouldn't see me. So I said, I won't leave. Fine, after an hour, somebody come talk to me. Oh, we'll set up an appointment with you, but we need money right here now. You're not insured. Yeah, how much? $2,000. I'll have it. I'll bring it. I'll bring it in cash. Okay. So they schedule me an appointment. They call me on the phone. Talk to me for about 15 minutes. And in the meantime, a week later, I'm just going through this epic battle and this epic pain. I'm dying. I'm wasting away to nothing. I go in for my biopsy surgery, and this arrogant prick, he's in there, and oh, I'll never forget, he was like, I'm an artist, you know, and he's in the tube, and I'm like, yeah, fuck you, I'll show you art. And anyway, he's doing this with me, you know, and they go into me, snip it, pull it out, which they never should have done. And he snips it anyway, so go home, we'll have the biopsy in a couple days. I'm still sicker than sick, I'm losing weight. Finally, 2 days later, they call me, I'm scheduled with the surgeon for cardiac. He's an Indian descent, adopting punk-ass piece of dog shit. Young, arrogant piece of shit. So I go into his office for my meeting. He says, now who are you? I said, what do you mean, who am I? I have an appointment. Oh yeah, I was supposed to come see you last week up in the hospital there, but I got paged, but I got busy. He said it just like that. I'm like, really? Wow. And so I says, my biopsy back. I don't know, let's look. He types it in on the computer. I had to tell him how to spell my name. He looks at it, he says, no, benign, you're fine. I'm like, thank you, God, thank you, I'm cheering. And he says, no, wait a minute. That's when Dr. Taos snipped a piece out of your stomach. There's no stomach cancer. No. And he went, oh no. He said it just like that, and he turned the screen, you could see it flashing red. I'm like, oh God. He says, oh, that's bad, it's metastasized, those tumors are live as life. So he says, got out this map of my guts just like this, and he says, I'm not even going to mess around, I'm going to slice you from here to here. I'm going to take your whole lower right mesentery out, bowel and everything. You can live with that part of it. And I says, well, it's going to work? I don't know, it only takes one cell that I can't get, but I got to get it, it's your only hope. I'm like, fuck you, I told him, you ain't fucking doing that to me. No fucking way, as I've always been about opening up, but here I've fallen back to, Jobs had the same idealism as I did. Don't let them open you. As me, my uncle, the neurosurgeon, told me my whole life. Don't let them open you unless you're going to die. So I'm confused. I'm like, no. What about seeing the oncologist? What about the oncologist? And he's like, yeah, what about the oncologist? You know, haven't you seen? I said, no, I haven't seen her. Oh, well, let's schedule that. You know, oh, you're scheduled for tomorrow. Or in 2 days. So in the meantime, the Huntsman calls me. Well, you bring down a big check. You know, we need $12,000 up front, this, that, you know, well, but you're scheduled to see Dr. Hansen. So, okay. So I go to see Dr. Hansen, which my uncle is a guy named Thomas Blanch. Well, he's really my dad's cousin, we call him my uncle, who was one of the greatest heart surgeons in American history, who started the autoclave, was brilliant. Everybody thinks I'm his son. Same with Marshall, the neurosurgeons. We have the same last name. Everybody knows it. I look like him, I talk like him. Everybody thinks I'm their son, which I'm not. And both of them, you know, they're wonderful men, but he's been dead for years. I go in, Dr. Hansen says, Kevin Blanch, you're Kevin Blanch. He says, I know you. You know, everybody knows me in this town. And he says, you know, Thomas and I were partners. He's the most brilliant man I ever known, Kevin. And he says, you know, and we talked, and I says, you know, Dr. Hansen, I have the ability to pay. I have the ability to pay. You know, and then I told him this story. And he says, here's Vicar's office right next to his office. And I told him this story. He's like, I'm so glad you didn't have that surgery. And he thought, and he says, Kevin, I'm going to do a bunch of work on this tonight. Let's schedule for your bone marrow biopsy. You know, the next day. Okay, so I go in, I had no idea what a bone marrow biopsy, and by the way, here's his magnificent PA. I mean, it's lined up like cattle. When I went in to see him, he was an hour late. My best friend's mom was sitting right next to him, who has since died from this disease. That's how the incident, it's like cattle. He was an hour late, but he's always, I mean, you see, he's an incredible, true Christian, brilliant man, you know. So, I get a call from the Huntsman, and I says, well, I've seen Dr. Hansen, they're going to bone marrow biopsy me tomorrow. So I went in, and she's from San Diego. You know, here this whole thing started with my dad, the Pendleton Marine down there, being nuked in the Nevada test site. But so they buy bone marrow biopsy with the attending physician's a girl I grew up with. You know how they can't say a word about you. And anyway, so they go in, we talk for a long time, and she says it'll take 4 or 5 days for this work to come back. And by the way, those bone marrow biopsies are brutal, but waiting for the results is even worse, and I've had multiple ones. And so, 5 days. The next day, my daughter flies in from Manhattan, and my whole family's around. I'm at my daughter's house. I'm a wreck. I am a total mess. I'm a total wreck. The phone rings. It's Dr. Hansen's secretary. And she says, Kevin, you need to go to the bone marrow transplant center immediately. She's just a young girl, didn't know. You know, well, I know that thesis. I watched my father go like this. I just completely broke down. But then I thought back when we were standing in that office, and I remember Dr. Hansen trumping all these doctors, and I remember him sitting there and his mind churning and thinking about Blanche's, and thinking about him. And later I found out that he argued with the pathologist for literally a long, you know, well over an hour. You know, he's a very calm, rational, brilliant, genius man. I got a miracle right then and there. Right then, that in his mind, right then, talk about a miracle. Without that, I'm dead. So they said, go down to the bone marrow at the top of East LDS. I was in that dump when I was a kid. I've worked on that dump. It's under construction. I said, it's been under construction since like, yeah, I'm not going to that dump. You know, and I was just freaking out. Bone marrow, I've got leukemia, you know, bone marrow transplant. Oh, no, it's over. I watched my father die. You know, my daughter's like, no, 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 don't you panic out. You call him back. So I called back and left, and she says, he's right in the middle of procedure. He'll call you back in exactly 1 hour. And that hour was the worst hour of my life, by the way. I was just totally, completely broke down. He called back, and you could hear the crack in his voice. He was breaking up. He was very emotional. And he says, no, 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 Kevin, no, Kevin. He says, you have a really nasty, huge mass down here. That is a nasty, evil cancer that has happened quickly. Now I know it just happened post-Fukushiama very quickly. I didn't have it. It wasn't in me when I gave those reports. It was not. I know that now. It didn't pass through my G-pole. It's impossible. I know that now. And he says, no, no, and doctors like that don't use the word cure. He says, Kevin, I have great hope for you. That place is incredible down there. And I says, I'm not sure, but I think maybe you're right. I told him a story that in the meantime I got on the internet and I'd run regression through my platform of a 51-year-old male having metastasized carcinoid cancer. It was kind of ridiculous numbers. So I kept searching. I found a YouTube video, 14 views, of a pathologist in New York who had sent it out for his students on slicing the pathologist when he snipped it, and the slicing of the pathologist on the course, and how they get it wrong more than they get it right. And it's a very difficult cancer to diagnose. And my light went on. So I started searching. Believe it or not, this is another miracle. On the internet, I found the only study on OS de novo presenting in tumors leukemia, which is extremely rare, the only study that exists at the university. I found it. I had it. I told Dr. Hansen about all this. If without me finding that, I don't think his brain goes into that mode. Or any argues. Silverman, one of the best pathologists in the country, claims it's one of the only ones he's ever gotten wrong, which I believe he got it wrong. He dipped it in the wrong solution. So I go down there. Well, by default, Dr. Fimbo Peterson is from northern Denmark, the same place that my bloodline is, the exact same village. He was looking for a place to set up. The LDS Church has nothing to do with it. They need to take their name off of it because the Mormon Church is my bloodlines. The very first Mormon in this entire region is my regular grandfather, the first white man to set foot here. The first man buried down there is my grandfather. I mean, they count me when they need me not. But anyway, in his crackle in his voice, he's like, Kevin, I have great hope for you. You're strong. You know, I think that maybe this madness, we can cure you. He used the word cure. And I'll never forget that I hung my hat on that, and that dream. When I went down there, I was so critical and so hardcore. And I went to that hospital that day, my morning. They says, Greta will be calling you. She's your caseworker. Thank God I landed in that magnificent, beautiful place. It's hardcore. It's an ICU unit from hell. Individual rooms, tubes in the rooms, only 33 beds, intense intensive care. Hardcore intense like you would not believe. I go in there, I'm so much pain. Just do anything to me. My stomach's so cramped up. I'm in so much pain. So they take me and they stand me naked up like this. And they beam the lights all over me, prep me for everything, and I'll never forget that guy and woman in there. And the guy says, Kevin, I've worked 30 years. You're very strong. You're ripped up with muscles through your body. That you got tremendous. And I said, yeah, I've had that hawk trauma in my hand for 35 years. He's like, you trust me, I've been here for 30 years. You're going to need every bit of it. Oh, did I? They took me in. They go into your spine, do a lumbar puncture, shoot chemo in there because it likes to hide there. They mess around with your brain and your eyes, and then they flip you over and put the central line, wrap it up over your collarbone, put it down into your jugular vein right next to your heart. They do it like that, boom, boom, boom. You don't even know what's hit you. You're so sick. And they put you in that room, they immediately, they have to. This is so aggressive. That's why I get so violent. And this Rick Simpson, this asshole in Texas who, by the way, milked $2 million out of a philanthropist here while he was 85 years old. It's intense. It can kill you in days. It can rip off 33% of your body mass in as short as 3 weeks. And it's caused by nuclear fallout. We know this factually. This is no commentary. It is documented. So I go in there, and I'll never forget the nurses come, my beautiful, incredible nurse Whitney, that my personal nurse. Oh my God, thank God for her. What a beautiful person. I'm so sick, and the doctor comes in, he's like, my God, look at your stomach. I've never seen a guy your age with a six-pack. I said, my stomach's been contracting like that, and I was already strong. It's been contracting like that. And then he says, holy cow, your muscles are that thick, we can't even get through them. I says, yeah, I know. And he's like, holy shit. Now that I know a lot of in-shape, outdoors type people get this, I think it's a lot of breathing deep and exercise deep. We're out there in that downflow. Exercise, we're sucking in that air deeply into the tissue as it's accumulating into the bone marrow. So he comes in, and they immediately start chemoing me so hardcore. And I'll continue this story, but this story, as it was the YouTubers and the vlogs and the spirituality, but I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to lay it out in detail. I'm going to do part of it down there in San Diego, these miracles. And why I'm doing this, I want people to understand, because the genie's out of the bottle in the nuclear contamination. I've gave these reports before, and I want this story to be given away for free. I don't want to sell it in a book. I want this to be given away. And there are ways to prevent this. There are ways, lifestyles, and things that can increase your odds, and I want people to know it's in the inception. If I wouldn't have found that YouTube video, found that Dr. Hansen, that spiritual, I don't know what happened, whatever, and my fight diagnosis, which my uncle says 4,000 people a day die from this, including two of my very close friends who passed from the same type of cancer just a couple years ago. This is off the hook, including Tana's beautiful 5-year-old little angel in her brain. I purely misdiagnosed, which people don't even believe that leukemia can form in tumors. It can. I think it happens, and it's increasing. Young girls in that hospital. But I'll go on with this tale, and I will tell this tale. I'm going to lay the whole story out in the miracle. And the reason I want this is so when you get sick, and or prevention through your food and through your diet, and the things you can do to ward this off, because we're all being